All right, multimedia. This is Mr. Campbell. I've got a great tutorial for you that we're going to run through Edpuzzle. So we should be in Edpuzzle by now. This is Adobe Animate. This is the first time you've maybe seen it for most of you. And we've got the whole layout. We've got, as usual, our menus across the top. File, Edit, View, Insert, Modify, Text, Commands, Control, Debug, Window, which is where you find a bunch of panels, and Help. When you open Animate, you'll usually see this splash screen. There's a bunch of choices on here. You probably won't see much stuff on the left. Recent items is most recent things you've had open. Create new is where we're going to start. Now, we are going to generally work with ActionScript 3.0, and that's going to be good for programming ActionScript for games. ActionScript is a programming language. 3.0 is the version that we're on so far. So if you click on this, it's going to open up a default area. It's got a default size. It's got all these presets. What we want to know first is what's here and how do I use it. So first off, this area you see here is called the stage. And the stage is the area that represents, in other programs it's called the canvas, but it's the stage here because things move on it like on a stage. Now the area that's off stage, you can put things off stage. So if I draw a shape over here, you'll see that it is in fact off stage, but it's not going to be visible if I run this. We run the program by pushing Control Enter, and we see there's nothing there. Now if I take that object and move it onto the stage, even part way, Control Enter, we see it's part of the way on there. So the stage is the area that you can see in a given composition or project that you're making in Adobe Animate. The next important area we're going to talk about is the library. Now the library here is empty, but if I open up something else that I've been working on, for example, this object properties thing that we'll be working on later today, there's a bunch of stuff in the library. Now the library shows me a preview of what the thing is. It also shows me the name of the object and its linkage properties. Linkage properties are something to deal with. We deal with when we're doing programming and putting objects on stage. That'll be in our next tutorial. So linkage is important because it's going to be the code name for the object before it gets put into play. Now the use count over here is if I put some of these on stage, it may show me 1 for that far mountain. And if I duplicate it a few times, that use count just says how many there are. We're not going to be using that generally because we're going to be using programming to put our stuff on play. But the library is a place where you store all your reusable symbols. So the library is for symbols that we can reuse and have at the ready for use in either dragging into play or by using the programming to put them on the stage. What's next? Next we have properties. Properties is actually pretty important. Properties will describe the properties of whatever it is we have selected. For example, if I grab a tool, it says, oh, here's the properties of that tool right now. So you can change the stroke and the fill colors of an object. You can select an object, and it shows you the properties of that object. So where a minute ago I had the rectangle tool, if I select that with the selection tool, it says this is the shape, and these are the properties. Okay, so if I change the stroke color, the fill color here, to whatever, that should show me right here what those object properties are. Other properties you might see is if I've selected nothing, it's going to show me the document properties. And the document properties include, most importantly, width and height. And in this case, I've made a 375 by 667, which is about iPhone size. And in the default is 550 by 400. Also important is the FPS, or frames per second. So the default is 24. 24 is pretty typical. It's about as fast as we really need to operate for most of the games we're going to make in ActionScript. So as you continue building your game, this is important stuff to know, and you can change things around in here. That's about all the stuff we need to know for that piece at this point. The timeline. Timeline's down here. Now the timeline on a blank one is going to have one layer and nothing in it. We'll see right here there's an empty keyframe. So there's a little empty dot right there, nothing in it, and that indicates there's nothing in that frame at this time. If I draw something, you'll see that gets filled in by a filled in dot. So now that means there's something in that keyframe. Well, let's go back to the other projects we're looking at. It's part of your tutorial. And this tutorial shows a little dot means there's something in it, which we don't actually want. And there's the little A. The little A means there's programming here. So this frame contains some code to help make things work. So you can add layers to the timeline with this button here, the new layer button. You can make a layer folder to put a bunch of layers into to organize. And you can delete a layer by clicking on the garbage can button. You can also show and hide stuff in a layer. You can lock and unlock, and you can also change things to outline mode here. Let's see how that works. So if I make an object and I go to outline mode, it shows the outline. I can lock it, I can hide it. So those are all good things to be able to know how to do when you're working in your project. So back to regular mode, and there we go. A couple tools to cover real quick. We have the selection tool and the direct selection. Selection tool is if I have an object, and this allows me to select the whole thing and move it around. You do have to be careful because the stroke and fill are separate objects. So right there I just disconnected the stroke and the fill. And the direct selection tool allows us to select and manipulate individual points just like it is in Illustrator. Now I think it's called something different here. Here it's called the sub-selection tool, but it's the same as the direct select tool in Illustrator, and that's how that works. This one here is the free transform button. Free transform lets me rotate, squish, squash, stretch, move, all kinds of stuff. Also, we have the gradient transform tool, which we'll get into some other time, text, shape tools, etc. So the one thing I do need to cover before I move on too far is if I delete that shape right there, notice I can cut things up differently here. So you can select parts of objects this way. But the next panel I want to get into, if I push F9, and you can also find that by going Window and Actions, F9, this is my programming window. So this is where all my programming takes place. And in our next video, we're going to talk about the programming that I have here and what you're going to get started on to learn how to do some beginning level game programming in Adobe Animate. So more on this later. Thanks for watching. Make sure you cover the questions.